All right, you've got that, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah.
What will have happened, if you just bear with me a second while I just use a couple of props. This is the cattle wagon, and then this is the van. I'll do it on its side so you're able to see it better. The van travelling towards Chester in its own lane. The cattle wagon has come across the road and collided with the van. Now at impact, so the van from its original position, just take the van for now, has been hit by the wagon, it's been pushed backwards and rotated to where it's ended up. If we now take the cattle wagon, it's come across the road, hit the van, pushed it out the way, but that has started to cause the wagon to roll. And it's travelled across the road, both lanes, mounted the verge, and then it's rolled over onto its near side, and then it's slid and hit the tree.
Would the driver of the blue transit van, in your opinion, have had any time to react to the oncoming cattle lorry?
Having looked at the CCTV evidence, which doesn't show the collision, but we can actually see the lorry after the collision, and we can also see just before that 2 vehicles passing heading towards Chester. The first one, which would have been the witness that we had before, Mrs. White, and then the second vehicle was the transit, and then a second later we see the wagon coming across the road. So when we take a normal driver's perception reaction time, your time to perceive and react to an unexpected event is typically 1.5 seconds. At night this can be extended. If we look at the CCTV coverage that we have, we see the vehicle, the transit, passing the camera, and then a second later the heavy goods vehicle coming in the opposite direction, and the impact has occurred by that time. So as far as the driver of the transit would have been concerned, he would have seen the vehicle in front maybe move, and he had less than a second before impact.
The crash caused loads of arguments. My dad kept asking John what had happened. He couldn't understand how something so awful could happen if John had been driving properly. Dad asked him if he'd been using his mobile. John went mad. He kept saying it wasn't his fault and he wasn't on his mobile. He said, "What kind of idiot do you think I am? And why doesn't anyone believe me?" That was a lie as well.
May it please, Your Honour, may I call the defendant to the witness box?
Yes, certainly. Thank you.
I swear by Almighty God, the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Right. Would you like to sit down, Mr. Phillips?
Please.
Keep your voice up, please, and answer your barrister's questions. Yes, thank you.
Do you remember the events of the 30th of November 2007?
Yes.
In your own words, could you please describe?
I was driving along the A511. Having driven on the road for a while, I was aware of bright lights coming towards me, another vehicle, the lights I could see, and then there was a loud bang in the impact, and that was the crash.
When did you first see the transit van?
I was first aware of the lights of the transit van, and my awareness of the transit van really was only at the course of the accident. I saw the lights first, and then that was it.
What was your initial reaction?
I must admit, when I saw the lights, I was slightly confused because I wasn't sure. The lights seemed very bright, which seemed unusual.
So, did you react in any way at all to these lights? Did you brake at all?
I think I might have slowed slightly, but I didn't take any significant action.
How long was it after you saw the lights, before the collision?
No time at all, seconds.
You maintain that the collision occurred on your side of the road?
Yes.
Hi, Mr. Phillips. Just in regards to the mobile phones, you said that you don't use the mobile phones whilst you're driving, no? And the only phone that you do use is the Nokia one, which is your works phone?
Yes, indeed.
There's a hands-free for that Nokia, isn't it?
Yes.
But there isn't for your own personal phone?
No.
Do you know how to use that hands-free kit correctly?
In theory, although I haven't really had cause to use it.
Okay, and that hands-free kit couldn't be used for your own personal phone?
No, it was made by Nokia as well, I believe.
Okay. Just in reference, if you all turn to page 218 of the jury bundle, we can see from number 1 on the list that a call was made at 15 minutes past 6 in the evening. Were you stationary at this time?
I don't believe I was stationed up at no.
How would you then account for this call to have been made at this time?
Maybe a prior call in the bad signal area.
Okay, Mr. Phillips, is it possible that somebody else would have been able to make these calls from your phone at this time?
No.
No. And is your phone, whilst you're driving, is it in reaching distance? Where do you keep it in your cab?
It's kept in the cab, so yes, it would be in reaching distance.
There's a couple of text messages on your phone that were sent around that time.
Dad asked John if he'd been drinking, even if it was just one. He swore to Dad that he hadn't. That was the only true thing he told us. So he hadn't had a drink, but what he'd done was just as bad. Dad went on. He said he still couldn't understand it. Was he on drugs or something? John told Dad not to be pathetic. He swore he hadn't taken any drugs. And if he had, drugs aren't as bad as drink driving, because you're more in control. Well, when he said that, Dad went mad. John told me that the police don't test for drugs because it's hard to prove you've taken them. There isn't a breathalyzer for it or anything.
So you know what these effects are?
Yes.
For example, at one of these parties, if someone slipped you amphetamine, you would know about it?
I suppose so. I don't know how much I was slipped though, so I suppose it's difficult to say.
That would lead me on to the toxicology report that we have. In your system, it was found that you had cannabis, amphetamine and prescription medication called a Fixor in your system. How would you explain those drugs getting into your system, Mr. Phillips?
The only thing I can think of is that since I was at...
John saying he hadn't used weed for years was just another lie. The blood test proved he had, and they showed he'd taken speed as well. It was getting worse, and he still denied it. All he could do was blame other people.
It is reasonably likely that people at the party were smoking cannabis, for example, although I myself wasn't.
So you went to a party, a club and a bar,
yes.
And on each of those occasions somebody slipped you cannabis, amphetamine and an antidepressant drug?
Well, I suppose I could have passively taken in the cannabis if other people were smoking it. The only explanation I can have for the I suppose amphetamine is that yes, somehow, I don't know, in the drinks or the punch or whatever was at the party, it must have somehow been in there.
The worst thing about what John did is that there's one family who will never be together again.
What happened when you reached the collision, Mr. Collins?
Whenever I came upon the collision, I firstly noticed the van pointed in the wrong direction on my side of the road. I thought that the van had spun out, but then I noticed that the cattle lorry had embedded itself in a wall, and my lane of traffic was blocked, so I stopped my car and got out and had a look at what had happened. And then I went over to see the driver of the van, and there was a lady over there with the driver, and she was saying that they'd lost the pulse and that they needed to clear the roof so they can get airways opened into the driver, but he didn't appear to be alive at the time.